It's Mazda's Sports Look, where you see the brightest stars, the leading personalities, the headliners and cover stories of the sports world. On Sports Look, the issues get analyzed and the questions get answered. The host of Sports Look is Roy Firestone, award-winning journalist and interviewer, supported by an expert cast of sports authorities. Sports Look is brought to you by Mazda, who invites you to test drive the turbocharged MX-6 GT, the luxury sports coupe for those with a high regard for high performance and value. Now, here's your Sports Look host, Roy Firestone.
Hi, everybody. If you wanted to describe the most remarkable athlete in sports in terms of physical dimensions, you wouldn't impress too many people. After all, he stands 59 inches high, weighs about 95 pounds. But this athlete is a wonder. First of all, it's his dedication to a sport he could have abandoned long ago. He's gone to work for the last 40 years, rain or shine, 40 years, in one of the most dangerous jobs on earth. If you wanted to define the word jockey, you need only show his picture, because his face is etched with the wisdom of his world. For 40 years, Bill Shoemaker has dominated sport like no other man. An almost incomprehensible 8,700 winners. That's winners. That does not include the thousands and thousands of seconds and thirds and starts. At 56 years of age, the shoe still fits. He's earned $120 million in purses for his owners. Of his 986 stakes wins, better than 250 of those were worth $100,000 or more. Bill Shoemaker does not ride for money alone. Glory does have its place, but no man has ever had the spotlight like the shoe. He races day in and day out, mainly for the pure love of his profession, and that deserves to be underscored today. A rare television one-on-one with William Shoemaker, whose biography, Shoemaker, co-written with the legendary Barney Nagler, hits the stands this month. Today we'll talk to the Shoe about his incredible career on Sports Look. Later, Robert Rieger, who has photographed Bill thousands of times, selects some of his favorite portraits, and it was not easy narrowing them all down. But we will first narrow down Bill Shoemaker. Let's try to dispel a myth about the fabulous Shoe. That you were, in fact, at birth 2.5 pounds, very sickly, that your grandmother put you in a shoebox, covered you up with blankets, and it put you into an oven to keep you warm?
Well, actually, she lit the oven and opened the lid and put me on the lid, and the heat coming from the oven kept me warm.
So that part of it is actually true?
That's exactly right. It's true.
Now, your grandmother said that you looked like a little rat when you were born. Is that right?
Well, I fit in a shoebox, so I couldn't look too pretty, I guess, when I was born.
That's really an unbelievable thing. I mean, that you survived, and you were really was touch and go for you to survive.
Well, actually, I lived in the country, and we didn't have incubators and that sort of thing in those days, and so the doctor didn't think I would live through the night. And my grandmother said, well, he might not live, but I'm going to keep him warm. So that's what happened. She put me on the oven, and the next morning I was squeaking like a little mouse, I guess. I was still there.
Still squeaking, some might say, too. Right. Let's go back and talk about the first time you got on a horse. I think you were about 7 or 8, and you did it without the approval of anybody in your family. You were on a farm,
Sure.
And you held on to the mane of the horse without a saddle, apparently, and rode around the ring, and you felt important, and that was one of the things that set you up.
I climbed up on the fence, and the horse was next to the fence, and I was just maybe that tall, and got a hold of the mane and got on the horse, and he walked around the corral for a while, and my mother was watching. She was scared to death, and my grandfather happened to be there, and he said, be quiet and don't bother him, let's see what happens. And I got along very well with the horse.
Made you feel important? Made you feel something special?
I thought I was in a 10-story building. I mean, it felt I was up that high, and it felt great.
First time you bet on your own horse was the last time you bet on your own horse, right?
That's a funny story.
What'd you bet? Something like $5,000 bucks?
Somewhere in that area, yes.
Now, jockeys aren't supposed to do that, apparently, or it's an unwritten rule anyway.
Well,
Don't bet
actually, you can bet on your own horse if you want to. You can do that, yeah. So I did, and the horse was maybe 10 lengths the best. He was about number 3 pole position, going 6 furlongs. He stumbled leaving the gate, got pinched back to last, circled the field, and got beat a nose.
You got beat by a nose for $5,000 bucks?
Yeah, and he should have won by about 10 lengths, and that cured me from there on. I said, I'll never do that anymore.
They still do a lot of betting in the
I
jockeys?
don't think jocks do that as much as they did in the old days. It's you know, there's so much money around, they don't have to do those sort of things.
Let's talk about the great race just a couple of weeks ago between Ali Sheba and Ferdinand. You're aboard Ferdinand, of course, the race between the two Kentucky Derby winners. This has been a great trio of races.
Yes.
Can you describe what it's like to be neck and neck, the final moments of the race, and what you do as a jock to make it better?
Well, right here, we're both running head and head, as you can see, and I went and got him about the half-mile pole to put some pressure on him so he wouldn't be going too easy. But I had to put pressure on my horse at the same time, so here we are coming down the stretch. I got a nose or so in front of him right here. And my horse has a tendency to ease himself up, so I had to wait a little bit. Now I'm shaking the stick at him. The other horse comes on a little bit at the finish. But it was so close, you see the finish of the race.
A quarter of the nose.
That, yeah. And
I wanted to ask you about the jockey. Can a great jockey take a mediocre horse and defeat a great horse and a mediocre jockey?
well, I don't know. That would be very difficult for me to say, you know, or believe him, because I think if it's a great horse, you could ride him, you know.
I don't believe that.
Yeah, really.
By the way, one thing about weight, you've pretty much never fluctuated. You're about 95 pounds. Yet you eat anything you want, unlike most jocks who can't eat anything, basically.
True. But I'm not a big eater. You know, I eat 2 times a day, and usually cereal or bananas or something for breakfast, sometimes eggs and toast. It depends.
Bulimic problems for jockeys? Jockeys who deliberately try to throw up, you know, because they don't want to have to put on the weight?
Some riders we have do that, yes. They eat a big meal, and then they leave it down for a couple of minutes, and then they go throw it up.
Let's talk about maybe the greatest moment of all the years on a track for you, and that was aboard Ferdinand, because it was a sentimental moment for you. You'd seen Jack Nicklaus win the Masters, and you told your wife, Cindy, at an advanced age, if Nicklaus can win, so can I. You really believed in Ferdinand at the Kentucky Derby.
Well, I did before the Derby, and in fact, I believed him as a 2-year-old way before he ever ran. I'd worked him a few times and knew that he was going to be a real nice horse. And right before the Derby, and at Churchill Downs, he had trained so much better than he'd ever trained in his life. And I had great confidence in him, and I knew I had a great chance to win the Derby.
It had been 21 years since you had won the Derby. You do anything different from those 21 years, from one Derby to the next?
Well, you know, it's hard to remember all those years in between 21 years, but no, I don't think the thing that I did different than that I probably wouldn't have done when I was younger is I got pinched back leaving the gate. I was #1 post position, and they pinched me back to last. Now here I'm last, and I said, well, you know, I'm here. I might as well take my time and don't rush him and let him finish. See, where when I was younger, I might have rushed him up too early, used him in the middle of the race, and he would have won the race.
It was very emotional for you.
It
You
was,
actually
yeah.
cried at the end of the race, didn't you?
Yeah, I sure did, you bet.
Why do you think it hit you so emotionally?
Well, because at my age, I never thought I'd ever really have a good chance to win the Derby again, and I was almost at the end of my career, riding career. And lo and behold, this horse come along, and here I've got, I thought, a great chance to win the race.
And for Charlie Whittingham, too, you know, all of that entered into the...
Sure, and then when it happened, it was just, it all boiled up.
People wonder at age 56 why Shoemaker continues to do it. I mean, he's obviously set records that'll probably never be broken in the sport. Beyond all of that, there is the element of danger every time you get aboard a horse. I think I read a statistic once that said 1 out of every 50 jocks will receive a very serious injury. We have some tape of some pretty graphic accidents on the track, and there's so many things that can go wrong. Do you think daily about what can happen out on that track?
No, I don't really think about it that much. You know, I think you go through periods of your life when you do think about these kind of things a lot. When you're very young, and you have a fall that kind of shakes you up because you haven't had one yet. But I've had so many of them, and I know that it can happen anytime. But I don't worry about it anymore. I just kind of, those are kind of rough-looking spills.
You were in that last one, by the way. That was up at Santa Anita.
Yeah.
You probably don't even remember that one.
I don't remember now.
Somebody said you get angry sometimes when you fall. If you're not hurt, you're not scared, you're angry.
No, I don't. We've had a couple of jocks that were angry because of the way the accident happened. Some jock ran up, shut him off, and then hit a horse's heel and fell in front of him, and he went over him. and he got up and he was going to go over and punch him in the nose because he made him fall, you know.
Can you isolate the moment of falling on a horse? Because I think Chris McCarran did that once for us, about what you're trying to do to survive a spill.
Well, if you have time, you know, usually it happens so fast you don't really have time. But when you go down, you try to relax and roll with the punching, so to speak. And if you can do that, that helps a lot.
I think it was 20 years ago, 1968, when you were involved in a very serious spill, maybe the most serious spill of your career, where you fractured your leg and your pelvis. This was right around Derby time, if I'm not incorrect. And they couldn't
before the Derby.
Yeah, right before the Derby, right. Dr. Curlin tried to set your leg or your pelvis with a pin and couldn't find a pin small enough.
Well, that was the femur, when I broke my femur, but he had to go to the children's hospital to get a pin that would fit in my leg.
Why then do you do it? Why do you take the risk, Bill?
Well, I don't, you know, when these things happened to me right at the time, I said, I'll never ride another race. That's the way I felt then. I didn't want to get on a horse. I didn't want to see a horse. But I think after time goes by and nature kind of heals you, it heals your mind too. I think you forget about that and you get anxious to go back and do it again.
He continues to do it, rain or shine, 5, 6 days a week. Bill Shoemaker, the greatest rider ever in the history of horse racing. And by the way, 25th Derby coming up. He'll be riding again. We'll come back, talk about the great horses he's ridden after this.
Guests on Sports Look receive the all-new Brutus Space Gym by Excel. Build and tone your arms, legs, stomach, and chest in the privacy of your own home. Solidly built, Brutus Space Gym folds away for easy storage. The Space Gym by Excel, the exercise company.
It all started 40 years ago, Golden Gate Field outside of San Francisco for Bill Shoemaker. By the way, I want to take this opportunity to, for the first time on television, show Shoe's shoe. Because this is something, you can't get a sense of the dimension because it's size what?
Well, it's a 1.5 or a 2, I'm not really sure.
1.5 or a 2? They make shoes that small?
Well,
for adults?
Gucci does.
Unbelievable.
That's the only place I've ever been able to buy a pair of shoes that fit me right out of the store was at Gucci's.
You know, when I've had Wilt on, we've talked about size and being considered the Colossus and, you know, how do people relate to the giant. Have you ever wanted to be 6'3", 240?
No, but to be honest with you, I've never felt as myself being little. I've always felt like I was 6 foot tall, you know, so I never had that problem.
You always rode that way, too, that's for sure. Let's go back to May 27th, 1981, a milestone in Bill Shoemaker's career. His 8,000th winner aboard a horse named War Allied. I don't think you probably remember too much about the details of the race, per se.
Well, he was laying up there second or third, I believe.
But what do you think this reflects, 8,000 wins in your sport?
What it reflects is a lot of work, a lot of riding, and 38,000 races. You know, that's
38,000.
About that, yeah.
Now, some golfers can remember virtually every winning shot or putt or, you know, they've ever had. You remember all the winners?
I remember, I'd say 90% of them. I'm not sure I can remember
90% of the 8,000?
Yeah, if somebody talks to me about a horse and they ask me about it, I can remember, yeah.
War Allied, there it was for you. You think it's a record that will ever be even approached? Some people talk about Pink Eye, but how about down the road?
Oh, I think it'll be broken, I'm sure.
Really?
You know, I really believe that. I think any record that's set's going to be broken because somebody has a goal to set that they can go and do it. And I did it, so why can't some young guy come along and do the same thing I did someday?
I think it was Johnny Longden was riding till he was about 58 or 59
Right
years.
in there,
Yeah.
Right.
There's Johnny right there. What do you remember about Johnny Longden?
He was a great competitor. When I was very young, I didn't really like him because he never gave you an inch and always took a yard. You know, he's one of those kind of guys then to me. But as I grew older, I became to respect him more and knew what he was all about and knew that he was a great competitor.
Talk about great competitors, guys that maybe particularly personality-wise you had your moments with, like Bill Hartack.
Yeah.
Larry King of CNN fame was on our show, talked about Bill Hartack, what kind of man the great jockey Bill Hartack was and what kind of a personality he had. This is what Larry King said about the great jock Bill Hartack.
He was the most honest. Bill Hartack was incapable of lying. So when he would talk about a horse, he would have the ability to take you into the race. he would also have the unique ability to tell people what they don't want to hear. The trainer would come over after a losing race, and the typical jockey would say to the trainer, took a bad step. Don't worry, just needed this race. Hardtack would say, this horse is terrible.
That's true about Bill?
Yeah, that's true. He would tell him like he felt. And he alienated a lot of people in the game by doing that sort of thing, but that was him. That was his personality.
Let's talk about you and your personality. People have discussed the fact that you were married 3 times,
Right.
but this last one has endured for a decade. So about Cindy and why this marriage succeeded where perhaps the other ones didn't.
Well, I think that I was a lot more mature when I met her and thought more about her and than I did the other wives when I was riding. I really didn't spend enough time cultivating a marriage, so to speak, you know, and that was one of the reasons why most of those other ones, the 2 other ones didn't last. But
Were you a bit wilder in your younger age?
I was, yes, I was.
Running around late at night? And
Well, we used to go to the nightclub at night, and I didn't get up in the morning like I do now, and I went through a period of maybe 10 years when I used to do that all the time.
it's curious because you do. You get up at 5 o'clock every morning. You sometimes ride till 7 at night at an advanced age, and you wouldn't think that a guy with all your credentials would care to do that any longer.
Well, I didn't do it much when I was younger. Now that I'm older and more mature, and I enjoy that sort of thing, I go to bed earlier, and I get up at 5:30, 6 o'clock, so I go to the track, and it's really nice out there. I never knew how nice it was until just recently.
Maybe he never met a horse, a winning horse, he didn't like. We'll say that. Bill Shoemaker will come back in a few moments. Talk about the great horses he's ridden after this. I want to congratulate Hollywood Park on its 50th anniversary. They open up Wednesday, and Bill Shoemaker will be back in the irons, as he will again in the Derby, his 25th Derby, the Kentucky Derby, coming up in a couple of weeks. Horse you got coming up for this Derby?
What horse?
Yeah.
A little horse called Lively One. He's run 4 or 5 times.
Is he a lively one?
He worked a good mile in 36 and 2 this morning, so I think he's got a good chance, yeah.
Who do you think is going to win it? Who do you think should be the favorite?
Well, I think winning colors, the Wayne Lucas filly, she won the San Diego Derby. She beat me by 7 lengths, so hopefully we can make up that difference.
Why do you suppose Wayne's never won the Derby with his horses? He's had so many great ones.
I don't know. It's a tough question. He's had a lot of nice horses come up to it, and maybe they haven't come up to it in the way that he wanted them to, or something, you know, and or something's happened to them. I don't know. It just hasn't happened for him yet, and it probably will one of these days.
Let's talk about some great horses. Just quick one-liners on some of the greats. Let's start with Swaps.
Swaps was one of my favorites and one of the best horses I've ever ridden in my life. In fact, I'd like to have him for this Derby.
How about Spectacular Bid? You rode him after the great Triple Crown year.
I did, and he was a great horse, a great racehorse. He won all over the country, carried all kinds of weights, and won. So, again, he was another great racehorse.
The old man, John Henry.
John Henry was one of my favorites. He was what you call the professional racehorse. He knew more about running than I did riding, so.
Not a sweet disposition, though.
No, in the barn, no. But on the track, he had a good disposition. Just in the stall, he was didn't want anybody bothering him.
How about Kelso?
Kelso was a great, great old gelding, and he always ran good in the fall of the year. Always won all the long-distance races, the Triple Crown races they had for older horses, and 5 years in a row, he won Horse of the Year in New York.
Finally, just some final thoughts. People say that the secret for the great shoe has been in the hands. Some other people say it's the patience. Others say it's the heart. What has been the secret?
I think longevity has been the secret. I've been able to survive all these falls and been lucky enough to ride a lot of great horses and meet a lot of great people in the game. So that's really why I've survived.
Great talent and a great drive and determination, I think, has a lot to do with it besides just the longevity. It's going on 40 years for Bill Shoemaker, still riding strong, still winning. This is the new book, Shoemaker, America's Greatest Jockey, with a great rider, too, Barney Nagler. What a combination. Pick it up. Bill, great seeing you.
Thank you.
Thanks for spending some time.
Pleasure being here.
Robert Rieger joins us in a few moments with a special portrait of the great shoe after this. Robert Rieger has photographed Bill Shoemaker for 30 of his 40 years of racing, and what we're going to do now is take a look back and a look ahead at the incredible career of the incredible shoe.
Well, you like emotion in sports, Roy, and I do, and I think that Bill Shoemaker is that kind of athlete, that kind of man. For some reason, he is loved in this country. He seems to me very American in his character, in his face, and he doesn't have a size physically. Eddie Arcara and I once talked about it, and we decided that from his iron to the tip of his cap, in a hand ride on a horse, Bill Shoemaker measured about 18 inches high. And it's this oneness with a horse that is so indelible an image on the racetrack. That moment and this moment on Gallant Man in 1957, here winning the Belmont in New York. That was the year, of course, that he stood up on Gallant Man in the Derby, didn't ride in the Preakness, and then won the Belmont. Here, another great Derby, Shoemaker on the inside on Tommy Lee and Saw Dancer on the outside. This is historic because it was the first disputed Derby where we had to wait 6 hours down there while they analyzed the film and all the rest of it to see who really won, if the bumping incident really happened. But these are the tight races, and I think that if we start to look at his skill as a jockey, he has a great understanding of quieting a horse, and especially in the starting gate. Most horses run out of the gate with their jockey aboard, but on the left, Bill Shoemaker always has his horse squared away, always has him quiet.
And a tough man, too. People don't realize Bill Shoemaker was almost a professional boxer.
Strong. And strong in the legs, too, which is what you need on a horse. Here, nothing disturbs him. He's on the far left here. He many times will choose to come around the long way in a race. And this, of course, makes him exciting to the fans. It's dangerous sometimes. Sometimes you win coming through narrow holes. They shut down quickly. But you got to take it either way. And then when you have a great horse like Lord at War here, and you can win going away, he does it. This, of course, we did a show on it the day that Bill Shoemaker reached the $100 million mark in earnings at Santa Anita. A great moment here in the winner's circle with his daughter Amanda and his wife Cindy.
Johnny Longdon says the thing about Shoemaker that sets him apart is his temperament.
Here's Amanda last week.
He doesn't really show a lot of emotion out there. It doesn't let a lot of things get to him.
I don't think he does. I told him this morning, actually, that I love reading his face after he just misses a big stakes win, comes in second, to see if I can find any of that misgivings, but it's hard. Here are those little hands, Roy, hardly bigger than the goggles he's adjusting on his hat. But it's those strong hands. It's not the back that rides an animal. It's really the entire body and the fit and the feel. And the knees are terribly important in controlling a horse and riding a horse. But it's Bill Shoemaker's fit on the animal. And here, that inseparable combination, you've seen it a million times, it seems. Charlie Winningham, his trainer that he's ridden for all his career. Here, the picture you liked so much last week of Bill on Ferdinand in now what's become a duel with Ali Sheba. He's so cuddly, I guess everyone likes to chuck his chin, including his wife Cindy, in the paddock. But it's an athlete that I will never forget. There's so many images, so many moments, and we hope there's another one, lively one here. Here he goes up on the horse, beaten by the filly a couple of weeks ago, but we'll do a preview on the Derby and see.
Great shots, and I think he put it best. He says, "I've never felt like a little man. I've always ridden 6 feet tall."
It looks it.
Yeah, thanks, Robert. We'll come back, tell you about tomorrow's show after this. We thank sports marvel Bill Shoemaker for joining us on Sports Look. Tomorrow, Orel Hershiser, the best pitcher in the National League so far this year on Sports Look. We'll see you then.
Sports Look has been brought to you by Mazda, who invite you to test drive the turbocharged MX-6 GT, the luxury sports coupe for those with a high regard for high performance and value.